The night bled across Nostramo's sky, a festering wound that never healed. In the depths of Nostramo Quintus, a child with eyes like shattered obsidian peered into the abyss of an alleyway. The darkness peered back. His fingers twitched, longing for a blade. He could smell the fear sweat of his prey, hear the ragged breathing of a man who thought himself a predator. But in this sunless hell there was only one true hunter.
"Please!"
The man blubbered as the boy's shadow fell over him. "I got little ones at home." "They're better off without you," the kid growled. The justice of Nostramo was swift, brutal, and absolute as the darkness that cloaked the planet in eternal night. The boy smeared blood on his rags, spattering the ground with dark drops. Another corpse for the rats, another soul pissing itself in whatever hell waited beyond. But the screaming in his head never stopped. The streets were a maze of shadow and sin, and the boy slipped through them like a wraith. His footsteps made no sound on the slick, oily stones. The air was thick with the stench of desperation. He stopped at a corner, cocking his head. Somewhere in the gloom, a woman shrieked. Then came the wet thump of meat hitting stone. The boy's lips peeled back in what might have been a grin if you'd never seen one before. Another night, another judgment to be passed. As he crept toward the noise, his mind flickered with half-remembered dreams. Blood and fire, a giant gleaming like a second sun. But that was madness talking. There was nothing beyond this endless night, nothing but scores to settle and bones to break. The alley opened into a small square, lit by the sickly glow of a malfunctioning lumen globe. 3 men stood over a crumpled form. "Well, fuck me!" the biggest one sneered, turning to face the newcomer. "Looks like we've got ourselves another playth." The words shriveled in his throat as he met the boy's eyes. Black as the void, seemed to swallow all light and hope. "Go on, then," he whispered, his voice carrying the promise of pain. "Judge me, for I have judged you." What followed was a symphony of screams and breaking bones. The boy moved like death itself, his blades finding every soft spot, every artery begging to be opened. He was the law in this lawless pit, and the sentence was always the same. When it was over, he knelt beside the woman's body. She was beyond saving, her eyes already glazing over. But as the boy touched her cooling skin, a vision slammed into him with a force that damn near split his head open. He saw himself, grown to impossible height, wrapped in armor black as sin. Saw worlds burn and heard the screams of more people than he knew existed. Saw a throne that gleamed like fool's gold, and a dream turned to ashes. The boy recoiled, chest heaving. The future unfolded before him like a tapestry of nightmares, and he knew with terrible certainty that every horror he'd witnessed would come to pass. In the eternal night of Nostramo Quintus, something new and terrible took its first breath. The visions haunted him, flashes of futures yet to come searing themselves into his mind. He prowled the streets with renewed purpose, each step bringing him closer to the destiny he both feared and craved. Time bled away, and whispers grew. The gutter rat spoke of a shadow that dealt death, a nightmare made flesh. To the corrupt nobles and crime lords who had long ruled Nostramo, he became a terror that stalked their sleepless nights. One rain-slicked evening, the boy found himself perched atop a crumbling spire, staring down at the festering wound he called home. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the squalor and misery that stretched as far as the eye could see. In that brief flash, he caught sight of his reflection in a shattered window. He was changing, growing. His frame had stretched, muscles coiling beneath pale skin like cables of steel. His eyes, once merely dark, now seemed to devour light itself. "What am I becoming?" he whispered to the uncaring night. As if to answer, his mind split open with another vision. A lab bathed in sterile light. He heard the hum of ancient machinery. A face swam before him, regal, golden, terrible in its perfection. A word echoed. "Father." He snarled, shaking off the vision. He had no father. He was a child of Nostramo, born of darkness. Yet even as he denied it, he felt the pull of that golden presence, a destiny that reached beyond the confines of this benighted world. Below, a scream echoed through the winding streets. The boy's lips curled into a feral grin. The future could fuck off for now. There was work to be done. He leapt from the spire, silent as a knife in the dark. In an alleyway, a gang of thugs had cornered a young boy. They never saw the shadow that descended upon them. Bones snapped like twigs in a fire. Blood painted the walls in abstract patterns. When it was over, he stood in a tangle of broken meat, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The kid stared up at him, eyes wide as saucers. What are you?" he stammered, piss running down his leg. He paused, considering. In that moment, he felt the weight of his growing legend, the mantle of fear he had woven around himself. He was more than just some back-alley butcher now. He was becoming something else, something more, something worse. "I am justice," he said, his voice a whisper. "I am vengeance. I am the Night Haunter." As he melted back into the shadows, leaving the trembling boy behind, Konrad felt a shift in the air. Change was coming to Nostramo, and he would be its architect, carving order from chaos with blood-stained hands. Little did he know that far above, beyond the polluted skies and eternal night, the wheels of fate were already turning. The great crusade was beginning, and the Emperor's gaze would soon fall upon this world of darkness and its grim protector. Deep in the bowels of Nostramo Quintus, he carved out a lair that reflected the twisted landscape of his mind. The entrance was hidden in plain sight, a rusted hatch in an abandoned factorum. Those foolish enough to venture inside found a labyrinth of corridors, each turn bringing fresh horrors. At the heart of this maze lay Konrad's inner sanctum. Here, the darkness was almost solid, broken only by the sickly glow of lumens salvaged from the underhive. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow. Trophies lined the walls, not gaudy trinkets but reminders of scores settled. A drug lord's spine, stripped clean and polished to a ghastly sheen. The flayed skin of a child slaver stretched taut across a frame. In one corner stood a throne, if you could call it that. Melted down weapons from 100 dead bastards, more nails and edges than seat. Konrad rarely sat upon it, preferring to pace restlessly or perch in the rafters like some monstrous bat. But Konrad was not entirely alone in his dark kingdom. A handful of individuals had been drawn into his orbit, each as broken and almost as dangerous as the Night Haunter himself. First among them was Visa, a waif-like girl with eyes that had seen too much. Konrad had found her amidst the carnage of a gang war, last one breathing. Where others saw only a monster in the Night Haunter, Visa saw salvation. She drifted through the den like a ghost, tending to Konrad's wounds and keeping vigil during his increasingly frequent fits of prophecy. Then there was Grendel, a mountain of a man whose body bore the scars of a lifetime in Nostramo's fighting pits. He had offered his life to Konrad after witnessing the Night Haunter tear apart an entire criminal syndicate single-handedly. Grendel served as both enforcer and gatekeeper, his imposing presence enough to send most idiots running. Last and perhaps most unsettling was a figure known only as the Whisper. Man, woman, or neither. Fuck knows. The Whisper was more shadow than meat, slipping through Nostramo's guts and bringing back secrets written in blood. These three formed the core of Konrad's inner circle, each drawn to his terrible charisma and the promise of a world reshaped by fear. They were confidants, servants, and in their own twisted way, the closest thing to family the Night Haunter had ever known. Yet even they could not fully penetrate the walls Konrad had built around himself. In the deepest watches of Nostramo's eternal night, when the visions of a burning future threatened to overwhelm him, Konrad retreated to the heart of his lair. There, surrounded by the implements of his brutal justice, the Night Haunter waged a solitary war against the darkness within and without. Visa was perhaps the closest thing to a confidant Konrad allowed himself. She'd seen him butcher men like pigs, yet saw beyond it to the wounded soul beneath. Their interactions were often wordless, a shared glance, a gentle touch as she dressed his wounds. Konrad tolerated her presence when he shunned all others, finding a strange comfort in her quiet acceptance. There were moments rare and fleeting when Konrad's guard lowered around her. Once, after a particularly harrowing vision, she found him huddled in a corner, shaking. Without hesitation, she approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. For a heartbeat, he leaned into her touch, a lost child seeking solace. Then, as quickly as it came, the moment passed, and the Night Haunter reasserted himself. Grendel's relationship with Konrad was built on a foundation of awe and unshakable loyalty. The former pit fighter had seen strength in all its forms, but nothing had prepared him for the raw power and terrible justice of the Night Haunter. Konrad rarely spoke to Grendel directly, communicating mostly through curt nods or sharp gestures. Yet there was a mutual understanding between them, a kinship of killers. Konrad continually tested Grendel's loyalty, sending him out on suicide runs. Each time the big bastard crawled back, bloodied but breathing, the boy's cold respect grew. In Grendel, he saw a hammer to swing, but also a glimpse of what Nostramo might become if you beat it hard enough. The Whisper was a different beast altogether. Their relationship built on a delicate balance of mutual need and distrust. Konrad valued his web of rats and his knack for digging up the nastiest secrets of Nostramo's elite. Yet he was ever wary, knowing that one who traded in secrets could just as easily turn against him. Their exchanges were tense affairs, conducted in the deepest shadows of the lair. The Whisper would materialize, seemingly from thin air, to deliver his reports in a voice barely above a murmur. Konrad would listen, his face an unreadable mask, before dispatching new orders with cold efficiency. There were times when the Whisper's intelligence proved faulty or incomplete. On these occasions, Konrad's wrath was terrible to behold. Yet the Whisper always survived, slipping away to the darkness, only to return days later with fresh information, and often the head of whoever had dared deceive them. As Konrad's power and influence grew, the dynamics within his inner circle shifted, reflecting the changing face of Nostramo itself. The once loose band of outcasts began to resemble a dark court. And guess who was playing king? Visa went from bandaging wounds to whispering in his ear. Her quiet became the eye in his shitstorm of a mind. One night, after Konrad had brutally punished a group of nobles for their corruption, Visa dared to speak up. "My lord," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the blood-soaked floor. Perhaps there's another way." Konrad whirled on her, eyes blazing. "Another way? There is only justice, Visa, swift and absolute. But the fear, the killing, it just makes more. What if we could show them a path to redemption?" For a breath, silence reigned. Then he laughed, sounding like someone kicking a bag of broken bottles. "Redemption? On Nostramo? You still cling to such foolish hopes?" Visa met his gaze unflinchingly. "Hope is all some of us have left." Konrad's face twitched, his expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Then you are a greater fool than I thought. But perhaps there is wisdom in folly." From that day forward, Konrad occasionally stayed his hand, allowing Visa to attempt her redemptions. The results were mixed, but it added a new dimension to his rule. During a strategy session, the Whisper's usual murmur rose to a normal speaking voice for the first time. The outer hives grow restless. They speak of resistance, of overthrowing the tyrant of Nostramo Quintus. Konrad leaned forward, intrigued by this new assertiveness. "And what would you suggest?" "Strike first. Show them the price of defiance, but—" The Whisper paused, then continued with newfound confidence. "Leave some alive to spread the tale. Let fear do our work for us." Konrad nodded slowly. "You learn well. See it done." As the Whisper turned to leave, Konrad called out, "And Whisper, I believe it's time you had a name befitting your station. What shall we call you?" The Whisper considered for a moment. "Sevatar, my lord. Let them whisper that name in fear." The crisis began with a series of explosions that rocked Nostramo Quintus. Entire hab blocks collapsed, burying thousands in rubble. As panic spread through the hive, Konrad gathered his inner circle. "Talk," he growled, pacing like a caged beast. Sevatar stepped forward, his voice low and tense. "It's the ghosts of retribution. A new resistance group, more organized than any we've faced before. They claim to fight for liberation from the Night Haunter's tyranny." Konrad's eyes flashed like knives in the dark. "Fucking idiots! They'll be choking on their own guts before morning." "There's more," Visa interjected softly. "They've taken hostages, children from the upper spires. They demand you dance with their leader, one-on-one." A tense silence fell over the chamber. Grendel's voice was a rumble of barely contained rage. "Let me crush them! I'll bring you their leader's head!" Konrad raised a hand, silencing him. "No, this requires a personal touch." As he turned to leave, Visa caught his arm. "Konrad, wait, this feels wrong. It could be a trap." For a moment, Konrad's expression softened. "Your concern is noted, Visa, but this is the only way." Hours later, he stood in the central plaza of Nostramo Quintus. The air was thick with smoke. Across from him stood a figure in patchwork armor, face hidden behind a skull-like mask. "Night Haunter!" the figure called out, voice distorted. "Your reign of terror ends today!" Konrad's laugh could have cut glass. "You think you know terror? Let me educate you!" What followed was a battle that would be whispered about for generations. Konrad moved like living shadow, his blades a blur. But his opponent was no easy prey, matching him blow for blow. As they danced their dance of death, Something itched at his brain. The way this fucker moved, the way he knew what was coming. It was like looking in a mirror. Suddenly, a vision slammed into him, a glimpse of a possible future. In that moment of distraction, his opponent struck, the blade slipping past Konrad's guard and biting deep. Konrad staggered back, genuinely wounded for the first time in years. He ripped off his attacker's mask, revealing a face that was a twisted mirror of his own. "Brother," the man spat. "Or should I say, you sorry sack of shit." Konrad's mind reeled. Another one? Here on Nostramo? The implications were staggering. Before he could respond, all hell broke loose. Grendel came in roaring like a berserker. Sevatar's agents moved through the crowd, blades flashing. And there was Visa, appearing at Konrad's side, helping him stand. "Boss, what's the play?" she whispered. Konrad's eyes never left his brother's face. "We show these fuckers what retribution really means." Subscribe for more videos like this one. Nostramo, a wretched orb forever lost in gloom, wheeled listlessly around a star too tired to shine, its scant light swallowed whole by the choking shroud of toxic smog. This hive world, disfigured by a relentless sprawl of metalworks and alchemical horrors, was a grim canvas painted in stark disparities. Boundless riches set against unspeakable squalor, adamantium fortunes atop a foundation of human woe. Beneath the planet's scarred crust lay veins of precious adamantium, the lifeblood of Nostramo's trade with neighboring stars. Yet, this wealth was mined at a dire cost. The industrial behemoths that tore at the planet's heart belched vile fumes into the air, shrouding the world in perpetual shades of gray and black. Midday on Nostramo was as dark as the deepest midnight elsewhere. High above, in the spires of hive cities, the elite luxuriated in their cloistered towers. Their world was lit by dim blue lights that cast spectral shadows across their lavish confines. Meanwhile, down in the underhive, life was a real barrel of laughs. If by laughs you mean back-breaking labor, crushing poverty, and the kind of despair that makes you want to gargle razor blades. Lawlessness thrived like a cancer in Nostraman flesh. Murder, theft, and brutality were the currency of survival, with so-called law-keepers merely brutal enforcers for the corrupt aristocracy. This ruling cabal, rotten to its very core, crushed any semblance of dissent, snuffing out lives and hopes with equal indifference. Depression wasn't just common. It was the national fucking pastime. Other worlds had war, plague, or laws to keep the numbers down. Nostramo had suicide. Dark humor and trust issues came free with every birth. A lovely parting gift from a world that couldn't give less of a shit about its people. Nostramo was a festering boil of a world, with 5 massive hive cities squatting over its barely habitable zones like bloated ticks. These urban nightmares, numbered prime through Quintus-like, were monuments to everything wrong with human ambition. Each city was a fortress unto itself, a sprawling labyrinth of iron and stone stabbing defiantly at the heavens. Kilometer-high smokestacks punctured the unending night, vomiting forth a ceaseless torrent of poisons birthed by industry. Iron bridges laced the dark chasms of streets, binding together a squalid tapestry of slums, towering manses, cathedrals, and factories. The architecture of Nostramo was a bleak fantasy brought to life. Gargoyles sprawled across every edifice, their monstrous visages apt decor for this benighted world. A dense smog blanketed all, transforming the meager glow from windows and lamps into ghastly, mocking halos. Nostramo and its moon danced a waltz that kept the planet in permanent midnight. Even in the height of what passed for summer, darkness reigned supreme. The air itself was a slow-acting poison. Dust, smoke, and chemicals worked their way into the flesh of everyone unlucky enough to call this shithole home. It trimmed years off lives already short on hope, ensuring that the best anyone could look forward to was a slow, grinding descent into an early grave. The people who stalked the hive cities of Nostramo were ghastly figures, ghosts in human skin. Though their genes shared the basic blueprint of humanity from the segmentum solar, their appearance screamed of a different heritage. Pale, gaunt, they were the children of a starless world. Their eyes were perhaps the most haunting, pupils blown wide open, the iris all but devoured by darkness. This freakish albinism, though genetically recessive, had spread like a plague. It was as if the perpetual night of Nostramo had burrowed into their very DNA. Beneath the cursed soil of Nostramo lay riches undreamt of, a wealth of adamantium so vast it was nearly beyond reckoning. This treasure, lurking deep beneath a facade of blight, rendered the planet invaluable. The trade of this rare metal to neighboring systems, and through them to the burgeoning imperium of man at exorbitant rates, fueled a grotesque economy of exploitation and greed. Now Nostramo wasn't just valuable, it was a ticking time bomb, a core of unstable energies seethed, biding its time. This precarious geological arrangement was a disaster waiting to happen, a disaster that would culminate in the planet's fragmentation under the relentless barrage of orbital fire, commanded by its most notorious offspring. In this realm of endless night, murder was the currency of life, and strength was measured in acts of violence. Every sin, from the pettiest to the most egregious, found a home in Nostramo's shadowy corners. Remembrancers who later chronicled its history spoke of a world where weeping and pleading were the eternal soundtrack, carried on winds that never ceased. The cities of Nostramo, from towering spires to fetid gutters, were claimed territories, each a fief to be defended, or a hunting ground ripe for exploitation. In the habitation stacks that pierced the smog, gangs reigned supreme, their rule cemented with bloodshed and terror. Feral bands more akin to wild beasts than men waged gruesome turf wars, their battles marked by savagery. Some of these animals even developed a taste for long pork, if you catch my drift. The gears of Nostramo's industry turned sluggishly in the mines and factories, overseen by gangs like the Iron Overseers or the Sons of Toil. These brutes, their bodies hewn from muscle and scarred by the furnace's kiss, patrolled the streets armed with primitive, menacing weaponry, imposing a brutal regime that bordered on slavery. Up in the fancy parts of town, the inbred spawn of the nobility played at being gangsters. Dressed like reject circus performers, they were as quick with a blade as they were with an insult. Charming bunch, really. All these gangs, whether they wore rags or silks, answered to the big boys, barons, counts, and lords. And those pricks? They bowed and scraped to even bigger fish. It was like a food chain of assholes, each one worse than the last. In truth, the line between Nostramo's rulers and its criminal masterminds was indistinguishable. They were tyrants alike, sovereigns of sin ruling over dark domains. The descent of Konrad Curze upon Nostramo was a ball of fire ripping through the perpetual night sky. It smashed through the city of Nostramo Quintus, plowing through miles of urban crap and rotting architecture. Didn't stop at the crust either. This kid went all the way down to the planet's gooey center before finally calling it quits. The impact left a brutal mark on Nostramo, gouging out a crater in its hard adamantium shell. This blasted pit, later sealed and shunned, became a locus of superstition. How'd he get to the surface? Maybe he swam through molten metal, maybe he rode a volcano. Either way, it was a big middle finger to physics right from the start. Unlike his brother Primarch, nurtured by human kin, Curze was left to the merciless underhive of Nostramo Quintus. His superior genetic heritage soon proved to be a formidable advantage in the brutal reality below. Curze carved out a dominion among the gangs and corrupt aristocrats of Nostramo. His methods were merciless, often veering into sheer horror, but they bore fruit. A harsh order was clawed from chaos, starting in Nostramo Quintus and slowly, bloodily, infecting the other cities. The advent of the Night Haunter was a cataclysm that reshaped Nostramo with chilling efficacy. Within a mere year of his emergence from the darkness of Nostramo Quintus, the crime that had once pervaded every corner of the planet dwindled to naught. The whole planet got the message: shape up or get gutted. Nostramo Quintus? It turned into a goddamn ghost town after dark. Streets that once teemed with the ceaseless bustle of the desperate and the depraved now lay eerie, silent come nightfall. Through unrelenting savagery, Curze crowned himself the dark overlord of the planet, a tyrant seen by many as a grim necessity. He claimed the title of Night Haunter with the blood of countless criminals and corrupt nobles, his reign a macabre tapestry of calm deliberation, marred by explosive violence. His rule was like a game of Russian roulette. Sometimes you'd get sensible leadership, other times you'd get a psychotic murder spree. If word got to him that someone had stepped out of line, he'd personally hunt the poor bastard down like a dog, leaving their mutilated yet unmistakable corpses as signposts of fear for all. The lucky ones died quickly. This bizarre fusion of calculated wisdom and primal brutality shocked Nostramo into a state of reluctant order and unforeseen productivity. Adamantium exports to neighboring systems surged as a horrifying equilibrium took hold, a balance forged of equal parts wealth and terror. People lived in a delicate balance of "don't rock the boat" and "please don't kill me." Nobody dared to have more than their neighbor, because that was a one-way ticket to a midnight visit from old Konrad. The remnants of any defiance evaporated when Curze began broadcasting his executions directly into the homes of his subjects. Their screams transmitted across Nostramo via the planetary communications network. These macabre displays from his throne room extinguished what little dissent remained. Under the Night Haunter's iron grip, Nostramo's adamantium trade reached new heights. The city's foundries roared fiercer. Its refineries and processing plants expanded across the urban landscape, and the mines delved deeper into the rich, dark crust of the planet. The Night Haunter, now sovereign of his shadowed domain, felt the keen edge of his transhuman senses honing themselves to an unimaginable sharpness. Deep within the silent vaults of his mind, he sensed his evolution, his becoming what he was always meant to be. In his dreams, where truths twisted in shadow often spoke to him, Curze glimpsed the coming of his creator, the emperor of mankind, omniscient and all-seeing. From his celestial vantage, the emperor had watched Nostramo's metamorphosis. The citizens, efficient and sanitized, toiled in unified silence toward a common purpose. The streets, wrapped in perpetual night, lay abandoned as the planet held its breath in sleep. Unaware of the grandeur of the Imperium, yet under the iron rule of the Dark King, they rendered unto him a reverence that shaped their society into a paragon of productivity, conformity, and utter submission. The arrival of the Emperor heralded the beginning of the planet's decline. The Great Crusade's shadow loomed on the fringes of the Nostraman system, and soon the Emperor himself descended upon this twilight world. Dubbed the Delegation of Light, the visitation saw the Emperor leading an imperial procession directly into the heart of Nostramo Quintus. The city collectively sobbed, men, women, and children lining the rain-slicked streets, their pale faces wincing under the harsh glow of the Emperor and his retinue. Many wept openly as his radiant light washed over them, reflecting off the wet cobblestones. The ground shook under the synchronized march. Massive, formidable phalanxes processed with regal gravity, their armor a stark canvas of black, gold, purple, and gray, clashing vividly with the backdrop of eternal night. Leading them were the giants, the Emperor's own, each one looking like they could bench press a Baneblade. Leading the vanguard was the Emperor, a sun clothed in human guise, a deity bound in flesh. His aura, wild and unbridled, struck blind any who dared meet his gaze directly, their vision forever seared with the afterimage of his divine light. Talk about your lasting impressions. And there, at the end of the road, cool as a corpse, stood the Night Haunter, Curze, the Dark King of Nostramo, waiting to meet his maker. Two flavors of terror, about to mix in the most monumentally messed up family reunion the galaxy had ever seen. The vast army of strangers, 250,000 strong, came to an abrupt halt. From their ranks, 4 titanic figures advanced, led by one whose divine radiance blazed like a beacon. Each presented themselves to the Night Haunter, who stood in silence, his mind's eye bombarded with the tapestries of their destinies. Rogal Dorn, sheathed in ornate gold, bowed his white-haired head with a sovereign grace. Through the murky lens of foresight, Curze beheld Dorn overwhelmed by traitors in a shadowed tunnel, their blades slick with his blood. Next, Lorgar Aurelian, looking like someone wrote a book on his armor and face. Talks like he's auditioning for a choir. Poor saps all sad about Curze's shithole of a planet, his eyes brimming with sorrow for the dark city and its weary denizens, met Curze's. The Night Haunter witnessed him encircled by psychic flames, his cries lost to a conflagration that scorched the heavens. Ferrus Manus, encased in dark armor with limbs of living silver, introduced himself with a voice that echoed the grinding of steel. Curze's visions showed the grim future, a severed head held by its stark eye sockets, displayed in another's merciless grasp. Fulgrim, arrayed in armor of deep violet, was the only one to greet Curze with a genuine smile. Yet, in the visions that danced before him, Fulgrim appeared as shifting, elusive shadows, his laughter echoing unsettlingly, never fully seen. Then, the radiant god himself stepped forward, his arms open in a gesture of welcome or dominion. As he began to speak, a vision of such terror struck Curze that he collapsed to his knees, his hands clawing at his eyes as if to tear away the sight. The Emperor touched him, and suddenly Curze was back in the land of the sane. Well, sane-ish. Rising, Curze's gaze lifted to meet that of the faceless, ageless deity, who now bore the semblance of a man. The Emperor's words, destined to echo through history, filled the air. "Be at peace, Konrad Curze. I've come to take you home." "That is not my name, Father. My people gave me a name, and I will bear it until my dying day, and I know full well what you intend for me." With these words, steeped in inevitable sorrow, Curze yielded to the Emperor's command, embracing the role he had long dreaded. From that moment, the fate of the 8th Legion was irrevocably bound to the dark, tormented destiny of their spectral Primarch. Once the scourge of Nostramo, the Night Haunter swiftly adapted to the customs of the Imperium. Under the guidance of Fulgrim, he immersed himself in the intricate doctrines of the Legion's Astartes. A rare bond formed between Curze and Fulgrim, fostered not through overt gestures, but through a silent acknowledgement of respect. This connection was rooted in an unusual first impression. Curze, typically besieged by visions of violence upon meeting others, saw no such horrors with Fulgrim, marking the Emperor's children's Primarch as uniquely significant in his eyes. Assuming command of the 8th Space Marine Legion, Curze rechristened them the Night Lords. He forged them into a relentless, grim force, instilling in them the strategic use of terror. Their power armor became canvases for fear-inducing symbols, a tactic that proved dreadfully effective. The Night Lords' approach to war was mercilessly direct. They wielded overwhelming force as their sole strategy, a trait that grew more pronounced under Curze's command. From the beginning, they had acted as the Emperor's weapon of dread against intransigent human worlds, a role they continued to embody with fervor. Curze's doctrine was simple: prevent further bloodshed by the overwhelming application of terror. They would descend upon a section of a target world with devastating force, wreaking havoc and slaughter. The rest of the planet was then given a stark choice: surrender and live under the peace of the Imperium, or resist and face total annihilation. Most worlds took one look at the Night Lord's handiwork and decided that maybe compliance wasn't so bad after all. The ones that didn't? Well, let's just say they provided more material for the Night Lord's unique brand of peacekeeping. Eventually, it got so bad that whole star systems would soil themselves at the mere whisper of Night Lords. Tithes paid, illegal shenanigans stopped, and the purging of their ranks of suspected dissidents. With Curze's departure, Nostramo deteriorated back into chaos. And guess what they started sending the Legion? Not their best and brightest. Oh no. They sent the worst scum they could scrape off the bottom of the barrel, those drenched in blood and cruelty. As Curze's grip on his Legion's brutality waned, his prophetic visions of a dire future intensified. Initially, the Emperor had wielded the Night Lords as an instrument of terror in the nascent days of the Great Crusade, but their tactics grew excessively violent. But did the Emperor actually do anything about it? Nah. He wagged his finger, maybe shouted a bit, but that was it. The 8th Legion's unending war left them in desperate need of fresh meat to replace their dead ones. Problem was, Nostramo had gone back to being a festering cesspit the moment Curze fucked off. Now, only the nastiest, most psychotic bastards were tough enough to make the cut. These new recruits, they were about as subtle as a chain axe to the face, They turned the Night Lords from kinda fucked up to holy shit. What the fuck is wrong with these guys? Real fast. Curze's brother Primarchs started looking at the Night Lords like they were something rotten stuck to their boots. Haunted by ghastly foresights of his own demise and his son's betrayal against their fellow Astartes, Curze's mental torment escalated alongside his legion's sinister renown. His attempts to seek counsel from his brothers were met with cold shoulders, their bonds never having been forged in camaraderie or trust. Things came to a head during the pacification of the Charault system, an operation shared with the Emperor's children and Imperial fists. Curze had one of his episodes, and Fulgrim tried to help. Curze went full doom and gloom, telling Fulgrim about seeing his own death, the Primarchs warring amongst themselves, and Nostramo's ruin. Disturbed, Fulgrim relayed these omens to Rogel Dawn. Now Dawn took this about as well as you'd expect, which is to say, not fucking well at all. He confronted Curze and ended up looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with a meat grinder. Curze was swiftly confined, his fate hotly debated by his brothers. A few hours later, they came back to find him gone, and his Imperial Fists guards redecorating the walls with their insides. By the time the Primarch stirred to action, the Night Haunter had already slipped out. He decided to pay Nostramo a visit on his way to the warp. The fate of Nostramo was a done deal the moment Curze tore free from his shackles. Returning at the head of his legion, he enacted a prophecy he had long foreseen. The Night Lords directed their ship's laser batteries at the very crater left by Curze himself so many years ago. The planet's core destabilized, Nostramo shattered into oblivion beneath their unrelenting barrage. Now, technically, Curze was within his rights as a Primarch to redecorate his planet with giant craters. But this little stunt? It was like cutting the last thread holding back the Night Lord's inner psychos. From here on out, it was all downhill. What happened next depends on who you ask. Some say Curze and his boys got hauled back to Terra to stand before the Emperor and the Council, trying to explain why turning your planet into space confetti was a great idea. It was simple, really. He and his Night Lords viewed their drastic measures as a continuation of their sanctioned role, a brutal enforcement against any who would defy the Imperial mandate. To Curze, it appeared the Emperor chastised him for the very deeds once essential to the Imperium's rise. He branded the Emperor a hypocrite, a ruler blind to the brutal necessities his vision demanded. Another tale whispers of a different path. After Nostramo's demise, Curze and his legion simply faded into the fringes of the Great Crusade. In this telling, no formal reprimands were issued, no fleets sent in retribution. The Imperium's high command, prioritizing cohesion over the spectacle of punishment, chose subtler retribution. They strangled the Night Lords with silence, severing supply lines to their sectors and quietly ostracizing them from the Crusade's spearhead. Fast forward a few decades and apparently all was forgiven. A recall order was issued, calling the Night Haunter to join the Loyalist armada poised to confront Horus Lupercal's betrayal at Istvan. Whichever version holds truth, the destruction of Nostramo was a watershed moment for Curze and his legion. It set them on a dark trajectory that would see them play a pivotal role in the galactic civil war that loomed on the horizon. While his brothers played at being demigods, Curze teetered on the edge of madness. He'd crawled from Nostramo to become a war king, but those visions, they never changed. Always the same damn story, him and his boys going down in flames. When Horus raised his banner of rebellion, Curze joined up. Maybe he thought he could change that future he kept seeing. More likely, he just wanted to drown out the voices in his head with a whole lot of screaming. By the time the Thramas Crusade rolled around, he was a shadow of himself. His soul was emptier than a beggar's purse, filled with nothing but despair and anger. His boys, the Night Lords, they were lost without him. Some of them tried to remember the good old days, building a better galaxy and all that horse shit. Others just wanted to kill and keep on killing. This division mirrored the tormented dichotomy within their Primarch. The Thramas Crusade, then, was not merely a conflict over territory or supremacy. It was a dire struggle for the soul of the 8th Legion and for the fate of a Primarch who'd lost his way. Some wanted to drag Curze back to some kind of sanity. Others, they were happy to push him right off the edge. The Night Lords were well and truly fucked by the time the Great Crusade wrapped up. A path wrought in the inscrutable machinations of the Emperor, far removed on Terra, yet destined to end beneath the cold stars of the Eastern Fringe. But these bastards weren't about to go quietly into that good night. No, sir, they were gonna kick and scream and leave a trail of corpses a galaxy wide. At first, Curze thought he could fight it. He figured if he killed enough people, bled enough worlds, maybe those nasty dreams would piss off. Even after Horus turned the Imperium on its head, his visions stayed put, stubborn as an old war dog. It ate at him worse than any wound, knowing all that struggle and death meant nothing in the end. When the Horus heresy kicked off, things really went to hell. The Night Lords started tearing into each other like starved wolves, trying to cut out the curse of their gene father. But this wasn't the end Curze had seen in his nightmares. No, this was just the first course in a banquet of horrors. Blinded by their fervor, they couldn't see the rot was coming from inside the house. They thought some outside corruption had wormed its way in, when the truth was they'd been carrying the seeds of their own destruction from day one. The Emperor, in all his infinite wisdom, had planted a time bomb right in their midst. Curze himself. All their fighting and purging wasn't going to change a damn thing. The Night Haunter had seen their end 1,000 times over in his cursed dreams. And while his boys were busy playing at exterminators, they missed the big picture. That their doom had been riding shotgun all along, courtesy of the Emperor's grand plan. Reveling in the bleak absurdity of it all, Konrad Curze was dancing with the idea that everything was fucked and always had been. It was this cheery outlook that led him and his 8th Legion, the Night Lords, to throw in their lot with Horus and his rebellion. After all, why not burn it all down if the Emperor thought their methods were too harsh? When Horus unfurled his treachery at the Istvan III atrocity, the galaxy reeled in shock to see the Night Lords rally to the traitor's banner. And it was at the infamous drop site massacre that the full measure of their treachery was laid bare. Once Horus cut their leash, the Night Lords went on a galaxy-wide bender of violence. They wrought havoc during the siege of Terra, clawing at the palace walls. Following Horus's demise, they kept the party going in the eastern fringes long after everyone else had sobered up. The Night Haunter himself? He went off the deep end, started calling the Emperor a hypocritical weakling, turned into some kind of feral beast. Some say he started listening to the whispers of chaos, but who knows? The campaigns of the Night Lords degenerated into unbridled horror, laying waste to countless worlds. In a desperate bid to halt their rampage, the Emperor decreed Curze's recall to answer for his atrocities. Yet, before he could be dragged back to Terra, fate intervened with a new cataclysm. Unlike his traitor brothers, Curze's end was not in battle, nor was it an ascension to demonhood. His demise was orchestrated on Sagwalsa by a Kalidas assassin named M'Shen. He saw it coming. Curze had always been cursed with visions of the worst possible futures, and he'd known this was how he'd check out. In the end, Curze and his legion proved that in the grim darkness of the far future, there's always room for specialists in making people piss themselves with fear, and they were damn good at their job.